Welcome to the Behavioral View. Hey everyone, would you like to get a CEU for this episode? Listen closely for the announcement of 3 secret words delivered throughout the episode. Take note of those words, and we'll tell you where to go to get your CEU when the show is over. Hi everybody, and welcome to the Behavioral View for our December episode. Truth be known, it's August. So we may be hot and sweaty, but this is going to come to you guys live in the holiday season, where we're bringing you a wonderful, wonderful gift, which I will get to in just a moment. My name is Shannon Hill. I'm the editor-in-chief at CentralReach Institute, and I'm here with my usual partners, Carrie and Issa. You guys want to say hi?
Hi, I'm Dr. Carrie Milico, Director of Clinical Programming at CentralReach.
And I am Nissa Van Etten, Director of Assessments and Clinical Training here at CentralReach.
And our special gift is we're going to wrap this season around, this end of the season episode around the idea of human dignity. And when I think of dignified humans, our guest comes immediately to mind. I'm going to have a hard time. I see you wrote your name as Nasia, but I think of you as such a dignified human being. I have a hard time not saying Dr. Nasia. I'll try. But would you like to just, for our guests, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. I want to start with a thank you. Thank all of you for the invitation, for me to come and share. I really appreciate it. And again, my name is Nasia Sorencione Ulazi. I am a human who resides in the Midwest, specifically Illinois. I've been here all of my life, although I have very deep family roots in the southern part of the U.S., specifically Alabama and Mississippi. Professionally, I currently serve as an administrator for an online institution, but I also am an active practicing board certified behavior analyst. I have a caseload of about 13 adults that I just can't leave because I love them and I've been with them for over a decade.
Oh, wow.
And I have the privilege of serving them and working with them, and we're happily aging together.
Love it. I love that.
Yeah, I have, again, worked in Illinois all of my adult life and my professional life. Started my career more than 30 years ago as a frontline professional working in the adult system. From there, I transitioned into working as a special education teacher, administrator, professor of special education, and have done a variety of things throughout the disability services system in Illinois. You know, again, this is my home state. Love it, love what I do, and love the people I serve.
Well, can I just say, I also really appreciate that you pronounced Mississippi the way Mississippians pronounce it with your syllables. So I know you're legit with some ties here.
Yes, Arlingdale, yes. My grandmother's home and from Alabama, Sonsville, Alabama. Great, you'll miss it on the map.
Well, we like to start things out with our question of the day. And since this is airing in the holiday season, I thought I would just ask kind of a general question to you guys. What do you really appreciate about the holiday season? What parts of that or resonate with you or you look forward to, or however you want to think about that?
Yeah. So am I starting off with my answer?
If you like, you have, it's your choice where you get to go in the lineup.
Well, so religiously, I don't really partake in the religious part of the holiday as I identify as a Muslim. My family is Islamic. But I love the time of the year because it's a time where I am inward, with my family, things tend to slow down, especially starting in November through that last week, first week in January, things really slow down. And I am developing a great appreciation for present moment.
Mm.
And I think that's what that time of year, or this is airing in December, this time of year really means to me, an opportunity to slow down. I don't know about you all, but I'm perpetually multitasking. And I find, during the holidays, it's a time for me to kind of stop, pause, and don't engage in all that multitasking and really be present and in the moment with the humans that I love.
I love that.
Yeah.
That resonates with me because I've had to deliberately make the choice to do that. I think, like, as you mentioned, I think we're similar in that, like, all of us here, given our profession and our gender and, that stuff just inevitably gets piled on our plate where we multitask and things like that. And I will take a significant amount of time off over the holidays, both around Thanksgiving. And, our family celebrates Christmas, although we're not religious, but uh, to do that, to sit and just enjoy and have time to think and look and feel and take it all in. I'm a Thanksgiving baby, so like it's all like about like every 4 or 5 years my birthday falls on Thanksgiving. So sometimes we'll even go and I love it. Some people are like, "Oh, do you know?" I'm like, "No, that's like the best birthday meal." And I also relish in cooking. Like, that's my favorite, and I'll take the Wednesday off beforehand, and that's my prep day, and I got the music playing, and, it's usually some, like, 90s hip hop because that's my jam, and I'm just doing it all, and it's usually, like, the Tuesday before that night, I have, like, my best friend comes over, and our kids will make Thanksgiving pies and we'll share them and things like that. And then around Christmas time, we'll do the same thing, but with Christmas cookies and we'll do, all different types of Christmas cookies that we'll share between families. And like, so, there's a lot of tradition in that. And those extra special, like memory for me, a lot of memories are in food. And then food is like time that you spend with family because then while you're eating, you're conversing and sharing in past memories, or we play a lot of games. So there's a lot of game time spent and we have a whole closet full of games. And so like for me, that time is so special just because you're right, slow down in the sense of all that extra busy work, but also maybe sped up a little bit in that sweet rich family experiences. So
I love it, Carrie. I want to be at your house.
welcome anytime.
I love it. That's awesome. And I'm a cooker too. I like to cook, and cook with music is the best.
Oh,
Yes, for sure. You
Yeah.
gotta put that love into it and you get some of that love from the
Absolutely.
music and
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
what do you think, Nissa?
I am very similar. And I love the ability to slow down from all the activities. My kids' sports definitely decrease in carpool. We started carpool last night. So I get to take a break from driving teenagers all over town. But really spending that time reflecting. So we do a lot of reflecting with the kids, looking into what their plan is for the next year, spending time kind of, going out because we live here in Texas where it's way too hot to go out any other time of the year. So we actually get outside and we get to go hike and walk and, spend time together. So I think we really enjoy the time to just reflect and relax together and get ready for January.
Yeah. Yeah, same. I mean, for me, my family was not religious growing up, or the generation above me was not religious growing up. But we always celebrated Christmas anyway. And they're also not sentimentalists. So my form of rebellion was to become spiritual and sentimental. So, yeah, like a couple of you mentioned, it's not necessarily a religious experience for me, but it is very much a spiritual time. However, I am known for something, so I will throw it out so I don't get called out on it. Christmas trees. Christmas trees, Christmas trees, Christmas trees all over the place.
I'll
And
say you're the one who has 5 Christmas trees in her house, or because
minimally.
I have real Southern friends, and they have multiple trees in
Oh,
their house.
wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I have a rough
themes.
porch now, so I
Do you
have
have
room
themed
for
Christmas trees too?
Yes,
Yes,
yes, of
yes.
course. And some years, not always,
Okay.
but I will tell you, it expanded though, because when my son was little, you have kids and you think, oh, while you're pregnant, I want him to be like this way, like me, and this way, like his dad, and and none of that ever happens. But of course, sight and smells of Christmas are the way that he and I are very much alike. So from the time he was little bitty, he would say, why can't we leave the Christmas tree up all year? It's just so
Oh.
cozy.
Yeah.
So the number of Christmas trees began to grow all
Aw. I love that
Yeah.
you gave that to him. That's so beautiful.
It is. And so I think that it's actually turned out to be a good question to lead in, because we're all describing this sense of slow down, reflect, be in the moment, remember your values. And I am just so thrilled that we were able to schedule this and to get Nasia. I did it. I did it.
Really, yeah.
Into this conversation. So when I sent you an email, I just asked, what are you passionate about talking about in this moment? And you gave me a fantastic list, including the thought that, and I don't know, I'm putting words in there. It was really a list. You wrote human dignity on your list. What does that mean to you when you wrote that list?
So, Sharon, in the past, probably 3 years, the world is really, well, 3 years ago, I will say the world really disrupted around topics of racial injustice and equity and inclusion. And I did a lot of work, a lot of speaking on those topics, but probably maybe a year and a half ago, I really started getting present to racial injustice, inequity, the lack of inclusion is truly a symptom of a larger issue. I didn't know what it was, and I came across the work of Donna Hicks. She wrote a book called Dignity. Dignity. This is a good piece of reading. And I did a deep study. And what I realized is what I said a moment ago, is truly that we have within our world racial injustice and equity, but it's a broader issue, and the issue is about human dignity, and in some cases, the lack of human dignity. So, what is human dignity? And I'm pulling my definition from Donna Hicks. It is having inherent value and worth, right? Having that, knowing we have it as human beings, honoring that in other human beings is human dignity, right? And it's separate and distinct from this idea of respect, right? Respect is something that is earned. Dignity, on the other hand, again, is just inherent. It's just there. When I train this, I have a photo that I use, and it's a photo of a mother or a caregiver gazing at a child, right? That is the dignity. That child hasn't done anything. It's just the look in that caregiver's eye is, you are worthy. You are just worthy. And somewhere along the line, we as human beings, we forget that. We forget to honor the dignity in ourselves and the dignity in other human beings. And I have a thought that I want to share, because I don't think I've shared this in conversations with colleagues, but I've never shared this publicly. But when we when the world disrupted around racial injustice 3 years ago, my thought is that a big part of that is we saw our lack of humanity and lack of dignity in each other. We got a glimpse of it really quick. And I think it scared a lot of people that we as human beings could dehumanize each other that way and not honor the dignity in another human being. And I think what people got present to is the racial injustice, the inequity. But I also think there's something bigger. In my work now, a good part of it is attending to that piece of us as humans that inherently have dignity and worth.
That's huge. That whole concept is gigantic, and I do feel like that's something that I have. It resonates with me. It's something that I have similar thoughts to what you were describing, and I'm going to tell you that sometimes I feel like when I say things like that, and maybe it has to do with my own demographic background, sometimes I feel like I get pushback on that I am excusing bad behavior, or maybe not excusing bad behavior, that I'm not paying enough attention to the groups that are really, really, really receiving the brunt of that by making it a larger issue. I wonder if you've experienced that.
Yes, Shannon, yes. I've experienced all the things, and that is one of them. And in my speaking and just work in the area of equity and inclusion and social justice, what I found was in my messaging, somehow the human beings who are listening to me assume my messaging is just for a certain demographic, right? They assume my messaging.
Oh, this doesn't pertain to me. Yeah.
That's
Right.
right. What was happening, and this will speak to your point, is that there was a whole demographic of people who weren't receiving my messaging around humility, weren't receiving my message around equity and even diversity, right? Equity, diversity, and inclusion was kind of messaged in that, okay, we're talking to primarily cis white men. And everybody else excused themselves from the message. So what did I see happening? What did I see happening? I saw oppression and inequity being demonstrated amongst other historically marginalized groups within those communities. And again, I think if we don't attend to really what the overall issue is, and then from my lens, it is this lack of attending to human dignity. This is what we recreate. It becomes selective. Okay, we'll message on EDI and it's for these people, and everybody else is, we're the people who are historically marginalized, and that message isn't for us. And we're recreating oppression within historically marginalized communities. When what I'm saying is, when we attend to human dignity, we have an opportunity to really attend to oppression and inequity at a much broader level, right? It's not just for, I want to be responsible for what I'm saying, that message isn't for a particular group. It is for all human beings. Because if one group is oppressed, then we're all oppressed, right?
It's functional. It's not topographical.
There we go. Keep it behavioral. It absolutely is. And that's my messaging now. Let's attend to human dignity, right? And start really calling ourselves higher in service of creating more equitable, inclusive, diverse spaces.
Mhm.
This really resonates with me because this is an area that I'm really passionate about as a minority woman in the space. And I think, it makes me think of a couple keywords like tokenism and systemic oppression that just occurs in, these structures that we're embedded in. And I'm reading some books that, so I live in Austin, Texas, and a predominantly white community. And my children are half, and I've said this a couple times on the podcast. They also question their experience here because they don't see a lot of peers that look like them, that are experiencing like them. And I am reading a book that I was very nervous to post on social media because I knew that if I posted it, half of my neighbors would unfriend me. And I have the book here because I've been trying to read 1 to 2 pages at a time, but then I get very angry as I read it. And I think that it's, again, like you're saying, that it's not that we're trying to speak to one particular group. It's as humanity. There is a dignity in seeing each other and seeing the experience and the differences in each other that allow us to respect one another and understand that we do have differences that we bring to the table, and seeing that even for the clients that we serve, that they are individuals that some may or may not be able to communicate, and the dignity in who they are and what they bring. It's so important. And these are conversations that are difficult, right? In a space like this, or even with my best friend who very clearly is different than myself and has very different values and backgrounds, that I feel nervous even talking about this topic because I feel like we may lose our friendship. It's a really scary place to be and to talk about.
Absolutely. Nisa, I want to acknowledge this, that you say it's difficult and it's scary, yet you talk about it anyway. So I want to acknowledge your courage. And another thing I want to just speak to is stepping into that brave space, right? It does take stepping into a space with courage and bravery. These are not easy things to discuss, right? Because of our own learning history, because of, at least for me, when I start speaking about these very unpopular topics, I have a history of my vocal verbal behavior being punished, right? So it has been incredibly important for me to really step into and lean into my value of being authentic, right? And doing that in a very courageous way. So thank you for having it be hard and your willingness to be with that and speak anyway, Nisa. I greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
I have so many questions and thoughts. I want to tag on to that idea of anger and what we do with it because, um, you know, most of us have something, something that we really do, and whether that's within the world of behavior analysis or something that we're doing personally on the other side that we're very passionate about, and we want to make a difference in the world. And you come up against people who um, speak against it, right? Who have a different system, and they are as passionate about what they are saying as you are about what you are saying. What I guess it's a multiple. Maybe we could do the whole rest of the session on this. I apologize for the large question, but it's two-part. What do you do in that moment, right, where you're trying to bring someone along? When do you put up a boundary and say, "No more. I just can't. I can't interface with this person anymore. I don't want to associate with this person anymore," versus I want to have a dialogue with this person.
It's a really good question. And it does warrant another episode. But let's try to let me try to speak to it. So in the world, and I'll speak specifically to my upbringing in North America, Illinois, how we acquire language, and specifically how we acquire our ability to disagree and have conflict. Most of us come into the skills that we have around language through a framework of right wrong. It's very binary, right? Right, wrong, good, bad, this or that. Okay. That framework doesn't serve us when it comes to speaking to issues where there's not alignment, where there's differences of opinion. One of the things that I have learned over the past few years is that communication and conflict requires some development of component skills. You know, I came across a book a few years ago called Nonviolent Communication, written by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. Excellent book. Because in that book, nonviolent communication, some people call it compassionate communication. That's what it does. It shares the technology that's available to us to help us have conversations with people where there's a difference of opinion, right? It gives us something other than this framework that we've kind of all been trained in, right, wrong, good, bad. And it honestly, that technology has changed my life because not only does it attend to and help shape my expressive language and communication behaviors, it helps to shape my receptive language and communication behaviors. So I begin to listen in a certain way, right? In this framework that we've been trained in, right? We come in listening a certain way. Okay, they're wrong. And we have in our mind they're wrong. So we're listening for all their wrongness. But if we can also listen openly and listen honestly, that's going to start to shape the reality of what we're hearing, right? And it goes back to that human dignity. When we're interacting with other human beings in a way that keeps us in that binary good, bad, right, or wrong, that somehow is an assault on dignity. Because you really can't hear and be with the person if you're already coming to the conversation with they're just wrong, right?
Great.
You're not interacting with that human at that point.
Yeah.
Who are you interacting with or what? You're interacting with your own thoughts. And that doesn't necessarily serve us. So again, this could be a whole nother episode, but that is it. How can we have these more difficult conversations? It truly is committing to developing the component skills, right? We talk about having compassion and being honest, but that requires the development of component skills. And that technology of compassionate or nonviolent communication has gifted me that.
I love that you talked about like that key element of like coming ready to listen in a particular way. I think that is fundamental. And like you mentioned, component skills, not many people or not everyone, hopefully many people have that skill because I think that is pivotal. But and another thing that I heard you say that I think was really important is that you said difference of opinion. But what about instances when you are interacting with someone? It's not like you're talking about like, should pineapple be on pizza, right? Or something a little bit more important, saying like, I have a difference of opinion of like providing discrete trial instruction versus naturalistic instruction, like, or RFT versus verbal behavior. Like we've seen some hot debates over that. But what about if it's like, this individual is providing harm and continues to provide harm to marginalized communities and doesn't seem to have any, like, doesn't seem to engage in behaviors that seem to shift in a different direction. And so in that setting, like, because I like this conversation came up with my daughter yesterday. We were driving back from the lake and she's an old soul and loves to bring up conversations. And she was like, well, everyone at school kind of, I'm friends with everyone, but it also means like all these people who aren't kind of like good people like me too. And I was like, like that's good. Like you don't want to judge someone who they are in middle school. But sometimes when you get to my age, like you get to, like for me, I'm like, you do this and this and this. And I no longer want to sit at the lunch table with you based on what their values are, how they continue to act in the world and harm others, without kind of looking at changing their ways of who they are as a human. That's not someone who I necessarily want to associate with on a personal or professional level. Is that something that, like, is there a lesson either like for me to learn, or do you have boundaries around that too? I mean, yes, you are the epitome of dignified. And sometimes I'm a little too like, well, you're what about the island? You know?
I love the inquiry here. I love the inquiry here. And let me share this. This is another lesson. Has been a recent lesson for me, because I lived in a space when I would come across those humans that were so out of alignment with who I was and our values were. There weren't shared values. Years ago, what I would have done is I would have stayed in the space of, well, I'm going to try to fix you. I'm going to try to change you. I'm going to get you over to my side, right? I think you are far more evolved, Carrie, than your approach is far more evolved than mine was. Okay. This is what I've learned. And a dear friend gifted this to me: acceptance. Radical acceptance of who this other human being is. I want to make a distinction. I said acceptance.
Sure.
I didn't say approval.
Right.
I didn't say agreement. Right.
Right. And let's clarify for our listeners what acceptance is, because I don't think that everyone knows this definition in the way that we may be using it.
Acceptance, really taking life on life's terms, right? Taking it, not agreeing with it, not approving of it, right? So when I started accepting the isms, specifically for me, where I got stuck was the racism. And the dialogue or the language in my mind was, okay, Nasia, you can't overcome this. It's always there. So I stopped. That was creating barriers, not outside barriers, but barriers in my own mind. So when I started to accept that this exists, not approve of it, not agree with it, but when I started to accept it, I started attending to my own behaviors to plan to move through it and past it. Right? And not staying stuck on kind of admiring this issue. And I think, and that's just a human thing to do, right? Sure. So the radical acceptance for me is helped me to take action more fully towards what it is that I value, instead of staying in that place where I'm chronically defending and taking moves and actions away from what's important to me.
Sure, sure. And that, I think that gives you a bit of peace, because that you're not constantly like, there's so many, you're not going to fix that person. You're not going to change their view. That is a worldview that is ingrained, and and that's going to be on their terms if it changes.
It's a different way of being in the world. So instead of focusing on what they're not, my attention is to what Nasia is, right? And where can I take action towards what matters to me?
Sure.
Right. I think for a long time, I spent a lot of time attending to what these other people aren't doing, instead of accepting they are where they are. I'm not going to change them. I'm not going to fix them. But what I can attend to is what Nasia is doing.
Sure.
The action that I'm taking in the world.
Now, do you choose to sit at the lunchroom table with them?
No, I do not. I do not. And again, that's centering my action. What I accept is maybe people that I have to work with. These may be people that I have to have a very cordial or professional relationship with. And I maintain cordiality, collegiality, professionalism. But at the same time, I exercise my choices, my agency, and my autonomy towards and in service of what matters to me, my value.
Sure. Yeah. I love that. Thank you.
All right.
I have to interject a secret word for our CEU seekers, and interestingly, I pre-select these. The word is peace, PEACE. um, so, all right. When you guys were talking about that, for me, a lot of my energy where I'm stressing myself out in an advocacy way, outside of this line of work has to do with domestic violence and coercive control, that sort of thing. So when I ask this question, and I agree with you 100%. And honestly, that's where I am right now. I've radically accepted that one of my friends is choosing to remain in her coercively controlled environment. This is hard. This is so hard. But when things happen, right, I have this internal war with myself on who is Shannon. Is Shannon a person who can stay in her peace box and not look over there while this is occurring? Or is Shannon the person who's going to stand up and say, this is wrong, and try again to get through? So, it's not a permanent decision that we make, right? I'm wondering if you, when you're talking about component skills, do you have some just starter skills that people who are in this struggle can just be practicing on to develop these skills?
Yes. And this is a gem. Okay. I'm getting ready to drop a gem here. So I shared that my training, my professional training, didn't start as a behavior analyst. My, if you will, my initial training was as a special education teacher. And I will tell you, if there's one thing I hope we do in the field is we attend to the way we train our pre-certificates, because we leave much to be desired. But one of the things that I received as a special education teacher that I didn't get in my behavior analytic training was how to self-reflect. And not just self-reflect, but developing that as a professional practice. So this is what I'm inviting listeners to do. Because when it comes to these hard, all of us, right? Life can get really hard. Dealing with domestic violence and dealing with loved ones who are in relationships that there's toxicity and there's hurt. It's tough. So how can we start? What's the starting point? It truly isn't to go attend to the situation. The starting point is right here, right now with self. And what can we do? Look at yourself, self-reflect. So when those thoughts come up, and this is powerful, when you are having a thought, oh my goodness, I'm having a reaction to my friend being in this relationship. Stop right there, because most of us are trying to avoid that thought, not be with that feeling that's associated with it. Stop and start asking yourself questions. Why do I feel this way? What is that about? When did this first start coming up? When we self-reflect on our own thinking in that way, that opens us up, one, believe it or not, to understanding others more. So I think a practice that we all have available to us right now is the practice of self-reflection. And if you really want to level it up, self-reflection, or that we call it reflective practice, getting into community, right? Especially in the context of the work that we do. Reflective practice came out of the infant or early childhood mental health fields because the work was so evocative. I honestly can't think of a work that's more triggering than working with children who have behavioral challenges. It is, yet we're not equipping within the field our pre-certificates with the skills they need to deal with what comes up in the context of working with a child who is engaging in challenging behaviors, what it means to work with a family who has the stress of, a child who has challenging behavior. So that is my gem. Really get into the literature of reflective practice, get into community. I also do a lot of work around developing repertoires for reflective supervision to help supervisors reflect with those that they supervise. So that's it. Reflective practice is the tool.
This reminds me of one thing that I've been talking about with respect to parent training, but I think it's relevant in this space too, is Dr. Becky Kennedy talks about it as most generative interpretation. But we've heard Pat Fryman talk about it as, it's like my daughter, again, same old wise soul, was talking about, we both love Frank Ocean. And he apparently had a short set at Coachella, and everyone was up in a roar about it. Oh, Frank Ocean didn't play a large set. And I was like, well, instead of it making it like this terrible thing about, oh, Frank Ocean wasn't good to his fans, I was like, well, let's think about it. Like, let's give it the most most generous interpretation. What could that mean? Like, we know that he doesn't play a lot, like, or doesn't perform a lot. Maybe he has some anxiety performing. And then my daughter was like, oh, actually, him and his brother who died had this bond over Coachella. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, let's create, maybe there's the most generous interpretation could be that, like, maybe he had a whole bunch of feelings around this. And the most that he could give was this short amount of time, right? He could have done none, but he had so much feelings that, that it was hard for him, but he wanted to be generous to his fans, that he did 30 minutes instead of an hour or whatever it was, right? Maybe he was sick and he was like, instead of canceling, I'm going to give them this little bit because I want to be nice to my family, right? So we create a story that it's like, because we could create a story about anything, but instead of the story being this like terrible thing and we go to the worst case scenario, we're drafting a story that goes to the other side. We're giving them the most generous interpretation of these variables that we have no idea what they are, but we're crafting this to be like, okay, and now it's easy for us to do this with Frank Ocean because we have no idea who he is. We're fans of his, and it's actually harder when we have it about someone that we know, that we're in close proximity with, that we have a whole bunch of opinions about. And this was my lesson to my daughter about her interactions with her brother. She's like,
Wow.
I know he always is like this. He always is this way and things like that. So it's really hard to craft a most generous interpretation about an event when it's about someone that you're really close to. So, Shannon, you have a lot of evidence around a story about your friend staying. And I think a lot of us probably, without knowing your friend, have a lot of feelings around that event as well. But crafting a story in which we can create something that's generous for why she's making those decisions may also make it a little bit easier for you to move throughout and have peace around why she stays in that situation.
Carrie, what you said definitely resonates with me. And what I really love, I'm a mom of a 24-year-old now. And I tried to give him these lessons in life. I love that that idea of story, right? Because we as humans, we that's what we do. We make meaning out of so many different things, but what a gift that you're giving that to your daughter early. She'll have that understanding growing up. I didn't. I'm just now through the use of reflection, right? Really starting to understand all the stories that I've created in my life and how I do have the power to be generative and to change it. Took me till, over 4 decades to get it, but I'm happy to hear that that's now part of what folks are doing with their children. I think that's great.
Oh, thank you so much. And yes, like I always say that parenting is more about changing who you are as a parent than it is changing your child. They're going to need to learn lessons, but it's about self-growth as an adult. at least that's how I view it now than this generation. And yes, it's a lot of work on me and then being open and transparent and sharing that with my children. And I mean, we
I
also
love
had a long conversation about taxes. Like this girl brings up some crazy things in the car, I tell you.
Well, that's the work of Carl Rogers, right? And what does he say? How do we best understand other by first understanding ourselves, right? I think we
Amen.
become better parents, better practitioners, better friends when we take time, self-reflect, and understand ourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
love that.
During the course of my son's life, I definitely had many experiences where I felt myself pushing on him
Yeah.
and realizing what I was pushing against were those things that were happening in his life that it was definitely about me, not necessarily him.
Absolutely. So, I mean, that happened in your life as a parent, but how much of that happens in our life as professionals, as
Different.
practitioners, right? Again, when it's 70% of our field works with children and families. And that work, I mean, can get very personal. It is not value free. And you think about what happens in the context of that work. Any of us, I know I have over my 30-year career, you can get triggered, right? Something can happen. It'll take you right back to that something that happened in your life 10, 15, 20 years ago.
All
Well,
right.
that
Wait a
makes
minute. Word number 2 has to be, I'm running out of time, is care. Go ahead, Nissa.
You got to spell it though.
CARE, care.
I think your point, Nasia, makes me think about self-reflection and supervision. I think that is so important because I can think back to many situations where I worked with very difficult learners, and I might have left that session in tears. There was one situation in particular where it was pouring rain and I was just an emotional mess. I had to pull over because I couldn't drive and cry at the same time in the rain. And I called my supervisor at the time, who was not available. And I didn't know how to manage the emotion of having been, in a very severely, with a very severely aggressive individual, and how I was feeling after that 40-minute kind of, don't want to call it an assault, but I wasn't able to get out of the hold, and mom had to come in, and it created this really difficult scenario with the family. And I called just to have somebody that I could talk to specifically about the case. And so I had to sit, on the side of the road reflecting, why am I feeling this? Why is this so impactful on me? I am in tears. I can't even drive home.
Yeah.
And not to have that, that lifeline on the other end of the phone. And I think that's something that supervisors need to kind of be prepared for. Is it's not just signing off hours. It's not just making sure they've mastered and memorized the technology of the science, but how do we support you in walking away from those difficult parents, difficult conversations, difficult clients? It's hard.
So Nisa, absolutely. And again, we don't have to recreate or reinvent this. There's a whole body of work developed. It's not in our field because not enough people know. You are absolutely right. That supervisory space can be a space of reflection. It's called reflective supervision because my thought is, we talk a lot about burnout, right? Reflective supervision can be an antecedent intervention for things like burnout, compassion fatigue. When we know we have someone who we can hold that space with, right? And doing it in a way that's, again, not just happenstance, but is a part of a practice, right? That's done routinely and regularly. Very good point. Thank you for sharing that.
And I feel like in behaviorally, like we shouldn't be afraid of talking about thoughts, feelings, and
Yes.
like Skinner said, there's papers on this. Like those are behaviors. Like we should not be trepidatious about them. And that includes in the supervisory practice. It's like it's okay. And this is something that I've been preaching about in the parent training space, but this is also like this extends to all of the work that we do as professionals, is that it's okay to talk about this. And I think that we've actually done some injury to our practice by vastly avoiding it. It's like, oh, don't touch that. That's a hot stove. Stay away from that,
I agree, Carrie. I agree. Because I guess the power with addressing our feelings and tending to them is we bring awareness, right? What we don't want is our feelings, right, to be in the driver's seat of our practice,
Exactly.
right? And when we don't attend and we're not aware, that's what
Then they
happens.
will. Exactly. That
They'll
is
be in
the end
driver's
result.
That's it. And in that space is where a lot of our biases are, right? So
Mhm.
if we can attend to our feelings, become awareness to what it is we're feeling, we can practice more objectively. We can practice from a more informed space and
Great.
place.
Well,
Great.
I know that Nasia, you have a hard stop, and we are approaching that. I feel like I would like to keep you here for another hour, but I can't. So I'm going to wind things up by saying thank you. Our final secret word is grace, GRACE. And I'm just going to give everybody this last minute or so just to let us know, are there things that you want our our listeners, our watchers, our viewers to know in terms of where they can access more of the information that you're talking about, where they can see you live or whatever. So, and remembering December.
December.
This is just
Well, I will say, check out that book, Dignity by Donna Hicks. Check out the book, Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Start there. And then, folks, watch me on LinkedIn and Instagram. I would love to have listeners join me in any training that I'm doing because a good bulk of my training now is in this realm of communication, um, reflection, and I have a goal between now and the time I retire, and maybe even beyond. I really do want to shift the way we train our pre-certificates and shift in the direction of let's really equip folks with what they need to be strong practitioners in the field. And that training, I believe, should include reflection, right? And really equipping people to be with and look at their own feelings.
Thank you. Well, I'm actually working right now on professional development ladders, including pre-service and continuing education for behavior technicians. So I might pick your brain.
Mhm.
But you guys can be on the lookout for those things coming forth from the Institute. Carrie, you talk about
Oh
parent training?
gosh. I think this is like, or it will be a lull in my schedule. I think you'll be picking up in the spring. I think Calaba is like, I think a new time, February. So I hope to be presenting there, and then they'll be picking up APBA. So I hope to be presenting there. Then that good old conference season starts, in the spring.
Everywhere, and you won't know where you are from 1 minute to the
Yeah,
next.
after that, they'll be like,
12 miles.
yeah.
Here's any exciting news for the new year?
It's so far off, but so close. I'm working with Cass on some culturally responsive care type work. So we're hoping to get some of that out during that spring conference season as well.
All right, folks, that Miss Van Etten and Cass Brown. Keep an eye out for those. Nasia, Carrie, Nissa, thank you guys for joining me. And this has been lovely and delightful. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And you'll see more of us, at least in the new year. But thanks, everyone.
Thanks for watching this episode of The Behavioral View. To get your CEU, follow the link in the instructions below. You can then go to the attendance verification quiz where you'll enter in the secret words and pay the CEU fee to generate your certificate. If you've already done the work, you may as well get the credit.